Get the latest news on your smart speaker whenever you want. Just say, play BBC News for Scotland.
This is Drive Time. Let's get more on this historic security pact between the US, the UK and Australia in what's seen as an effort to counter China. It's already causing some resentment from across the globe, with France reacting furiously to the announcement that Australia is to buy nuclear-powered submarines from the US, abandoning a contract that had been sealed with Paris. The French foreign minister described it as a stab in the back. Well, let's bring in Tim Marshall, whose latest book, The Power of Geography, covers these issues extensively, and Olivier Guitta, a managing director of the international security and risk firm Global Strat. Hello to both of you.
Hi.
Tim Marshall, what's China up to? Why this action?
What's China up to? China is expanding out into the South China Sea, trying to get dominance past what's called the first island chain. If you look at the map, there's a bunch of islands between it and the great open waves of the Pacific. And they mean business. So at the moment, what the Australians were going to do was buy a bunch of diesel-powered submarines. Well, they can't stay submerged for very long. They leave a trail, whereas the ones that the mostly Americans and Brits are going to build for them do the opposite. And so it's to solidify and to build the geopolitical architecture of the 21st century. And to be honest with you, John, I reckon they would have done this 20 years ago, but the Americans kind of had their attention diverted away from Asia Pacific onto Afghanistan and Iraq. And I think this flows, they planned it a long time, but honestly, this flows from the decision-making about why, one of the reasons to get out of Afghanistan, it's to concentrate.
Olivier Guitta, so a bit more on this then. What is this pact all about, do you think? What is it trying to do?
Look, I think in reality, this is an extremely good idea. I joined him in the idea of the alliance that would make a lot of sense to stand up to China in the region. What I think was a huge opportunity missed is twofold. One is that France would have gladly joined that alliance. France has basically taken part in a huge military exercise in the region with Japan and with the Quad alliance that includes the three countries that we mentioned. I think the main idea is basically to leave off France from the deal was extremely bad received from France because it was the contract of the century for them. Let's not fool ourselves. The money aspect is huge, but at the same time, there should have been a compromise to bring in the French as well and not stab them in the back because nobody knew that this was going on. And at the same time, you would have an alliance of three nuclear powers and three permanent members of the UN to basically stand up to China. Now, Biden, by pushing Canberra to go with this deal, has basically antagonized the French for good.
Tim, but you think it was the sensible deal because the submarines the French would have supplied were just not adequate?
Yes, they weren't adequate to combat what the Chinese are building. The Chinese are building a brilliant blue water navy, which means, operating way off their coast, investing so much in submarines and anti-submarine warfare, etc. You can take the view that, well, why shouldn't they? And indeed, they are a great power. But, they have intentions. They have intentions to move out and dominate allies. I would agree with the idea that perhaps it could have been handled better. France has been down in the South China Sea recently with parts of its navy, so has the UK. And what I actually think is the bigger picture is that Biden is attempting to build almost a Biden doctrine, which is that instead of thinking about Western powers, you think about industrialized democracies, including places like India and South Korea. But see, France fits into this sort of new architecture. And so to really rub their noses in it like this is quite something. But the Quad was mentioned. It's very important. The Quad is India, South Korea, India, Japan, Australia, and the Americans. And when you look at them on a map, they box in China, and it's a naval agreement. They're going to meet next week, I think, for the first time, the leaders in person. See it in that context. It's part of building a new structure to push back against the Chinese as they push out.
Olivier, then, help me. You both spelled out the Chinese threat, that they're moving down, moving across the world, moving to Africa, moving in Asia. What's the defense to that going to be then in the future?
Look, I think the fact that we're looking at the countries in the region that needs help, basically, namely Australia and Japan, and by the way, Macron has spent a lot of time to develop relationships with both Australia and Japan on the military side of things, specifically to counter the Chinese influence. So I fear that at the moment, you don't divide to conquer, which is what Biden has done. You need all the bodies available, and especially a nuclear power like France could help. And I'm sure there was a way to use French technology as well for the submarines, not the diesel one, but the nuclear powered. And there was a way of doing things. There are ways and ways of doing things with allies. Even the British Secretary of Defense said he understands the fury of the French Minister of Defense of what happened.
Okay. Olivier Guitta and Tim Marshall, thank you very much indeed. Now let's cross to sport. Jonathan, this is quite a story, this one, isn't it? This is Chris Sutton.